The Imprint Margaret Root Brown reading series is proud to announce a night with two renowned poets, Jennifer Chang, who won the William Carlos Williams Award, and Naomi Shihab Nye, National Book Award finalist and former U.S. Young People's Poet Laureate. Hear them both live on March 3rd at the Alley Theater. Tickets are only $5 and free for students and seniors. There's also going to be a book sale thanks to Brazos Bookstore and a book signing where you can meet the authors. Visit imprint.org for more details. That's imprint.org. Before we get to today's conversation, CityCast Houston's Summer Camp Guide is live this week. Check it out on our website and in our newsletter, Hey Houston. Today's featured camp is the Village School Summer Camp. This camp has so many different themes from STEM and sports to arts. It's almost impossible for students to get bored. They also have flexible hours, so no stressing out about pickup, and lunch is included. Learn more about the Village School Summer Camp on our website, houston.citycast.fm. Today on CityCast Houston, it's Friday, so let's break down the biggest news of the week. Joining me are education advocate Monica Flores Richart and conservative commentator Charles Blain. It's Friday, February 14th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Hey, Charles, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing good. Ready for the weekend. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's Valentine's Day. I can feel the love, and Monica is here as well. How are you, Monica?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I want to start with you. Tell me, what is your biggest story of the week?
The biggest story for me, I think this week was the protest at University of Houston that the students organized about safety. That, was on all the news channels. And I think it's a really important story for a lot of reasons, mostly because it is almost as if with this generation, learning how to communicate and protest in this sort of organized manner is kind of now part of your education. The school is facing some real crime issues and the students are really frustrated, and they have really been able to come together and organize in a way that with really kind of, it seems like solid suggestions to the administration about what they want to see on the campus. College is such a critical time for parents. It's the first time they're, kind of unsupervised in this way. And so knowing that our children that are in college are safe is really important. So that's one reason I think it's a really important story. The other thing is, starting college is so fraught with stress, and that feeling safe on campus is really, really important. And so that
it's almost like the bare minimum, Monica. Like, sorry to cut you off there, but it definitely is the bare minimum as a student, right? And I think back when I was at the University of Texas a really long time ago, I never feared for my safety. Like, I always walked around freely no matter what time it was. I always felt very safe. And the fact that these students have to go through this right now, I know there's been a string of crimes, the sexual assault, which was definitely heartbreaking. And students are worried. And it's good that they are protesting. But Charles, it's like, this is the bare minimum. Like, can the university just get that standard up?
You're right. It is the bare minimum. I mean, you're a kid and you're going off from high school to college. You expect to be safe in a welcoming environment where you learn. But as a parent, you also expect to send your kids there and be safe and not have to worry about these things. You mentioned the sexual assault. I mean, it's horrible. A 21-year-old student sexually assaulted in the parking garage. And not only that, but the person who sexually assaulted her was arrested later in the day and then was back out the same day. And I know I read articles where they were trying to get information from the University of Houston and University of Houston police and can't get any information on how this happened, how there was this, breakdown in communication between the campus police and the district attorney's office. And that's not reassuring for anybody on the campus, anybody who's looking to send their kids there, parents who are currently sending their kids there. Like you said, it's the bare minimum and it's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. And Monica, I was reading on Reddit that, there's one student who was recounting everything about safety and what they've gone through. And this student put that, yes, there are things like security offering to walk you to your car late at night. But when this student, used that service, it took 30 minutes to get security there. And University of Houston has increased their security presence. They are monitoring hotspots 24/7 now. So they are doing more, but it's sad that it's come to this. We talked about this earlier in the week as well. And growing up here in the city of Houston, we would always joke about like, oh, U of H isn't safe, right? Like those were like the memes about the university. And they did a good job of combating that. It has become a top tier university. I wonder how much this sets them back for future enrollment and, looking at parents who are going, do we want to send our kids there now?
No, and it brings up a really important discussion as well about prioritization. That's what I kind of heard throughout this protest. The students saying, look, we're spending a lot of money on sports. We're going to spend money on a stadium, lots of money on athletics. We really need to prioritize the safety issue as well.
I want to get to my big story, and we know Houston weather is wild. We've gone from the derecho to a hurricane. Then we had the epic snowstorm all in less than a year. And when the weather gets wild, we turn to meteorologists and the scientists to help us prepare, especially when it comes to hurricane season. But according to news reports, the Trump administration is now considering cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and this includes the National Weather Service by removing staff as well as any grants or research focused on climate change because, frankly, his administration doesn't believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've been seeing in this administration is kind of a broad brush when they came in, when it comes to grant funding, when it comes to USAID, just kind of canceling a whole swaths of things or at least putting pauses on them. And I think we do need a more measured and kind of surgical approach when we're looking at this stuff. Because like you said, I mean, we're Houston. This might be okay for some other places to have kind of a lack of resources in that specific area, places that don't deal with a wide array of natural disasters every year. We, like you said, deal with a little bit of everything every day. Similar to places like Miami and others that are near coasts and things like that. So it is concerning. We do need reassurance, especially given that we're in a region where we just were talking about in the local media about how a lot of homeowners insurance and flood insurance is being canceled or rates are going so high because of all of these issues that are happening with flooding and everything else. So it is concerning.
Yeah.
And we need a more surgical and measured approach when we're looking at some of these things. I think just coming through and canceling things because it's currently the trend or against the current trend is not the way that we should be approaching it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Like, by the way, I'm pro, like, let's cut out waste. Let's be more efficient, right? That is a good thing. But let's be measured about it. Let's not just do this so you can go on X and post that, oh, yeah, we own the libs. Like, it just turns into this whole thing. It seems like Elon does that every day. But yeah, like, let's be more measured about it. And I'm also thinking about, Monica, if there were drastic changes, right? And maybe we're not as prepared for hurricanes or we don't know the severity of a storm, then there's a impact of obviously loss of life on property, but I'm thinking on a federal level as well. FEMA response, right? Like, is the response going to be more expensive because we weren't prepared because you made this cut here? So does it end up costing us more money in the long run? There's just so many dominoes with this if they potentially do these cuts.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that anybody who's lived through, a potential hurricane hit, these things change at the last minute. We could 3 days before be thinking, oh, we're going to have a direct hit, but the nuance of every single measurement that has to go into it, how many times have we been prepared to like load up our cars and go, and at the last minute, oh no, it's Beaumont, or, you're going to be perfectly fine. And the thing is that there are, Republicans are often criticized for caring more about business, but there are real business consequences to not having this real time information. You think of the platforms in the Gulf, a lot of the oil and gas platforms out there, they have to prepare with enough time. They have to get their people to safety. There are real world economic consequences to doing this. And it's just, devastating all the way around. We have progressed and gotten to this level to where we have, this wonderful ability, and even then can't be, precise. And then to deaden kind of the progress we've made is just so backwards thinking, and it just
It is.
doesn't really take into account everything, kind of the network that relies on these sort of forecasts.
By the way, Eric Berger of Space City Weather talked about this with Houston Public Media, friend of the show. If you want to read that and kind of learn about the true science behind this, what it could impact, I've linked that story in our show notes, so definitely check that out. All right, Charles, speaking of budgets and being more efficient. What is going on right now with the city's budget?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mess to say the least. So when this administration came in, they projected a budget deficit going into this next fiscal year of about $220 million. Then about a week ago, they've been trying to fight this lawsuit, and the Supreme Court finally came in and exhausted all their appeals. And so now there's another $100 million that the city has to pay towards its drainage projects. And so $320 million is what we're short going into next year. And so the city released this efficiency study that they've been working on for maybe the past 6 to 8 months. They completed it towards the end of the year and presented it to council this week, that looks at different ways the city can be more efficient with its personnel and with its programs to try to consolidate and also just try to generate more savings to be able to then chip away at these significant deficits as we're going into the next fiscal year.
So with this report, do they get into specifics just yet, or is it just a high level approach?
So there were specifics in some areas, and then there was a lot of high level in other areas. In terms of specific dollar amounts, that's something we didn't get, and that's what I was hoping for, is specifically how much they are expecting to save. But what we did get are we looked at different things such as ARPA spending.
Yeah, and by the way, ARPA, that's the COVID recovery money from the feds.
So the city received, I think, $400+ million of ARPA funds during the COVID era. And what this report found was that, unlike other cities, we spent about 80% of that on operations rather than on kind of other costs that came and were associated with COVID. And so when that money was exhausted, well, then that left the city having to figure out how to pay for that. And then they also found other things like 40% of the management in the city, middle managers, are overseeing teams that are as small as 1 to 3 people. And so you can consolidate a lot of that. And so while they don't have specific dollar amounts tied to them, they do have kind of a plan to shift from that. So they were talking about consolidating some of these managers or teams under some of these managers and kind of trying to generate more savings in that area, which down the road will produce savings, but we just don't know exactly what that specific dollar amount yet will be.
Yeah, I did see that number that it could be up to 15% of the budget. And the budget last year was about $3.3 billion. So you do the math, that is a lot of money that the city could potentially save. And as you mentioned, look, there is that deficit. By the way, the police union, they are trying to get a new contract done as well. So if that's done, could that budget even be bigger? Yes. Like how much bigger, right? We don't know the details yet. They're still talking right now. So this city has a lot of tough decisions to make. Monica, your thoughts?
It kind of highlights the problem in any sort of bureaucracy. You inherit this kind of Frankenstein monster when you come into office. There are incredibly delicate political issues all over the place. And you don't get a bare bones kind of blank slate when you start, right? You inherit this. And so you make changes here and you make changes there. And, all you have to do is look at any administration's website, and it kind of reflects this monster, right? Some of the pages are updated, some aren't. The links are bad, because everybody's building on what you did before, right? And then you have, really delicate. The political stuff can't be kind of overstated. I mean, you have, one of the criticisms was that the city is very top heavy, right? And so there's a lot of people managing 1 or 2 people. Well, that's somebody's livelihood, right? That is somebody in this position who has earned this position, who has gotten this amount of money. What are you going to do in that situation? You're dealing with really people's livelihoods. And on the other end, you're dealing with emergency response times, things that are critical to the city as well. There aren't easy answers. And from a slightly cynical perspective, this report also gives the mayor some cover to make some really, I think, difficult decisions that he might have to make with the budget that he's inherited.
To be honest, even without this report, he was going to have to make these decisions,
Absolutely.
right?
And so it does give him the political cover.
Yeah, we didn't need this report to know that, like, hey, this city is facing a budget crisis. So whether it be the increase in taxes or maybe new fees, a big decision is going to be made here shortly, Charles.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And, we saw some council members trying to push a property tax increase just a couple of months ago when they were facing this budget, the current budget deficit. And the mayor said, well, I want to wait. I want to see what we can find before we move forward on that. And those council members took a step back and council as a whole rejected that idea. But I don't know that we're going to be able to reject that idea for very long.
Mhm.
We'll see what we're going to be able to do, but I do know that there's still an appetite among council members to pursue a tax increase because they just don't feel that there's enough revenue to cover everything that they have to do, even with savings that might be able to be found in this report.
Today's featured camp in the CityCast Houston Summer Camp Guide is the Village School. My daughter gets bored easily, like so many kids these days, so it's important to find a camp that keeps them engaged all summer long. And the Village School makes sure that rising PK3 through 8th graders are excited with theme weeks like art, sports, STEAM learning, and more. Parents, I know we're still busy in the summer, so the Village School has flexible hours from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., plus early drop-off and late pickup options. Oh, and lunch is included daily, so no need to stress out about making lunch every morning. Don't let summer slip away. Join the fun and make new friends today. Learn more about the Village School and start your summer adventure now at thevillageschool.com/summer. That's thevillageschool.com/summer. Look, there's no place like Texas, except when it comes to skiing or my personal favorite, snowboarding. And I get it, you're heading to snowier pastures, but before you leave Texas, grab one last taste of the real Texas in Amarillo. If you love a good Texas road trip like me, then Amarillo needs to be on the top of your list because it's quirky, wild, western, and a spontaneous city. I mean, where else can you spray paint a Cadillac, cruise down Route 66, and even find that perfect cowboy or cowgirl hat for rodeo season? Here's a pro tip for me. If you're driving to a ski destination, make sure you stop at Palo Duro Canyon right outside of Amarillo and hike in the second largest canyon in the US. Heck, I think you should stop on the way back as well because of how amazing it is. After that hike, be sure to carb load on some Tex-Mex and then pop into a speakeasy in Amarillo and grab a well-deserved drink. The mountains may be calling, but Amarillo will make you proud to call Texas home. Start planning your trip to Amarillo at visitamarillo.com and après ski into the real Texas. All right, I want to get to my most overlooked story. And in that same report, Charles, there was a study on crime rates as well. And we found out that Houstonians face more violent crimes and crimes to their homes, businesses, and other property when compared to other cities of our size. And I don't know if it's just me, but if I open my Instagram and I'm scrolling through and I see local business owners, it seems like every other day their businesses are being broken into. Heck, my dad's perfume store in Harmon, it's been there for over 30 years. It was broken into. They still haven't caught who did it, by the way, and it's frustrating. But so many businesses are going through this. So many homeowners, so many people are facing violent crimes. What are y'all's thoughts on the new report and the crime study, Charles?
Yeah, well, one thing I think with the crime numbers that's frustrating and also can be confusing at times is we often see this conversation about where they separate between violent crime and then they say nonviolent and victimless crime. Well, every crime still has a victim, whether it is your property and someone, steals it or breaks it, or whether it's accidental or intentional, there's still a victim associated with it. And I think this is something that the city has struggled with for a long time. I mean, we even saw when the mayor came in, there was the announcement of 264,000 cases that had gone shelved because we did not have the police staffing to pursue those. And so I think this is going to be a bigger conversation as we move forward. Like you just mentioned, we're looking at a multi-year police union contract that's going to be coming down the pipeline. They're going to try to make it very sweet so that they can recruit more police because we've been understaffed. And so what does that look like for both the property taxpayers, but then the police force as we move forward? Because we've been in this position for a long time. It hasn't been one administration. It's been many administrations that we've been seeing this.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up, yes, victimless crimes still have an impact, right? And our friends at Houstonia Magazine, they did a huge story on restaurants and the amount of break-ins they're facing and what they're going through and what the economical impact, the emotional impact of it is. I saw that Riel, which is a very popular restaurant here, they just basically account for a break-in every couple of months. They're just like, look, we know twice a year there's going to be a break-in, and we just kind of live with it. And everyone is so like, hey, HPD's trying their hardest, they're trying their hardest, but we're all facing this now, so it's frustrating. I can definitely, see where everyone's coming from. It's a hard one. Monica, your thoughts on this story?
Yeah, we need to really, we are constantly in competition with the other major cities in Texas for business, for all sorts of things, and we need to make sure that we're really in a situation where we're not falling behind. That falls with the efficiency study. A lot of the efficiency study was comparing among cities, and it's so critical. And the thing is, we also know that there's a crime link to the economy, right? When the economy's prosperous, crime is generally lower. And we are really embarking on this really uncertain time economically with what's happening in DC, what's happening in the White House, tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. We're living in such uncertain times that, the way we did things in the past, the way we allocated public resources, the way we could forecast things is just so different
Yeah,
different now. And but this has to be a priority if we're going to remain
it has to
competitive
be.
as a city. It has to.
Absolutely.
I mean, people are so much more mobile. I think companies headquarters and jobs are so much more mobile. We need to be an attractive place to live and to eat and to work. And this is a huge part
Just
of
run
it.
a
It's a
business. Yeah.
huge part of it. So it's absolutely critical.
Go ahead, Charles.
Can I just add something to that? Because I think the economic part is so important. And then there's the other flip side of the economic part that I think the public doesn't always talk about, which is the simple fact that whether or not you're the victim of a crime, if a business is a victim of a crime, they have to recoup that cost. And if you're a frequenter of that business, you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
paying that. And even if you're not dealing with business, if you live in a high crime zip code, your homeowner's insurance might be higher, your car insurance might be higher, all these other things that you have to deal with because of that crime issue. And so you don't have to be a direct victim of the crime, but you're still paying for it at the end of the day.
Charles, what was your most overlooked story?
Yeah, my most overlooked story was a recent announcement from Harris County Flood Control District it was actually from the Harris County engineer, that the flood control district is about $130 million short of its subdivision flood projects. And now these projects come out of the 2018 bond that we approved. That was I think that one was $2.5 billion. And since then, we've approved another bond in 2022, which was $1.2 billion. And then we saw a flood control tax increase that was about 60% increase in the tax rate in 2024 November. And so now they're telling us they're $130 million short. Out of the 181 projects, they've only completed 42 of them. And so it's incredibly frustrating. We talked about at the start of the show living in Houston and what we deal with when it comes to weather. Flooding is obviously a big deal here. And the fact that we're just now finding this out, and not only are we just finding it out, but commissioners just found out about it too when this was announced at commissioners court, and they were all equally as shocked. It's really a frustrating point. And for those projects that are undone where we're short, most of those are in precinct 1, which is a bulk of the city of Houston. That's Commissioner Ellis's precinct. So most people who live in Houston are dealing with it.
Yeah, and I saw Rodney Ellis was not happy about this and, basically called this an abomination, and it said as much as like, hey, how come my neighborhoods, which are more lower income, are not getting these projects done when other neighborhoods are higher income are getting these done? This is so frustrating as a voter, right? Like you see this, you approved it, you're like, okay, good. These projects are going to get done. And oh, by the way, we're short now. What? I get it. Inflation happens, costs change, all that. But to be short and not get it done after another bond was approved as well, Charles, this is just frustrating. How is this going to impact residents, by the way? Were these projects slated to be completed soon? 3 years, 4 years? Like, how is it impacting us?
Yeah, they were. I mean, these are 2018 bond projects. They weren't all expected to be done in 2018, but you kind of start a schedule that you're moving down to get them done. And so now that schedule is extended, which then extends the 2022 schedule for those bond project completions. And so, I mean, if you're living in an area that floods and you're hoping for a project and you were promised one in 2018, and that's why you voted for the bond, well, now you're going to keep waiting, but yet you're
Yeah.
paying far more for your flood control district services than you were before.
I'm curious, how did the commissioners not know about this until now as well? That's
Well, I know that's a big question, right? They should have all known, but this is a part of what happened back in 2021 and 2022, where they shifted a lot of responsibility to the county administrator, they created the county administrator position, and then to the county engineer.
mm,
And so it's kind of this department that then reports to commissioners. And this report was telling them that they were $130 million short. I don't know why they didn't report it to commissioners when they were like $50 million short, or they
yeah.
projected to be, why they waited till this point is beyond me, but it's unbelievable, truly.
Monica, let's get to your most overlooked story. What do you got?
My most overlooked story was there was a story about how Aldine is the only school district in the area who has adopted a longer school year. That is something the state legislature has pushed. There's a lot of summer slide that happens. A lot of students lose a lot of learning in the long summers we have. And so there's been a real push to shorten summers, elongate the school year, make it longer, and have students learning a little bit more. There have been a lot of complications in enforcing this, or in actually proposing these programs. They're having trouble with teachers, they're having trouble getting students in, et cetera. So it's a frustrating problem. What works.
Mhm.
You know that the longer school year is what works, but parent also, our students are under so much stress. They sort of need the break over the summer too as well. So there's sort of these competing interests in the area with these school districts.
Monica, you're a parent and an education advocate. So what would you choose? Longer school year, longer summer, or maybe something different?
I think that there's the potential for a lot of innovation in terms of how we structure the summers. What I always wondered was, we have PE as a course during the school year for a lot of our students. You get sweaty, you get grimy. It's the first thing in the morning for a lot of our students. You spend the day. And why don't we just shift PE to the summers? Why don't we have like these group sports activities where we can kind of focus on that? And if I think that there's a potential for some really innovative thinking in terms of programming. Everybody needs childcare over the summer, especially our most vulnerable communities. And I think there's a real way to link
Yeah.
that need with providing something that's fun and different and engaging in the summers, and that will prevent that summer slide, right? Maybe have a half day PE where it's really intensive. You can really learn a sport, maybe bring out some hidden talent in some of our Houston students. Maybe you're a star football player, but never knew it because you were never exposed to it or whatever. There's so much potential for innovation there. It's just, do we have the funding? Do we have the support to do
That's the
it?
big thing.
Right,
The funding, right?
right.
Like right now in the summer, so many libraries, community organizations are running, STEM camps, math camps, and different opportunities. But yeah, like, can we do something with the schools?
Right, because summer programs are incredibly expensive for parents. As a parent, it is shocking how many thousands of dollars you must
Hmm.
spend to keep your child engaged during the summer. So if there were things that were available, and maybe with a little bit of flexibility, yes, you want to go to Mexico to visit family for a week. We can do that. We can incorporate that in that. And that's not a reason not to attend camp the other days. I think that it's just a shift in mindset that we would really need to make this happen. And I don't know if the will is there right now. Just with everything else going on in the world, with
Yeah.
all other competing priorities, it's disappointing, but that's where we are.
And by the way, we've seen the shift in HISD as well when they got the District of Innovation designation, right? So their school year starts a little bit earlier, ends a little bit later. And by the way, with HISD, one of the proud moments of being a Houstonian a couple of years ago was when I saw that HISD put Eid al-Fitr, which is a huge celebration for Muslims in our area and for me as well, on their calendar as a day off. And guess what? As of this taping, they're planning to take it off. Good Friday will still be celebrated. Yom Kippur still will be celebrated as a day off for all students, but they just quietly took off Eid. And I was like, all right, HISD, that's what we're doing. So yeah, there's a lot to be, studied about this and what school districts are going to do. Charles, you want your quick thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious with the threat, quote unquote, depending on how you look at it, but threat of school choice coming down the legislature. How does this extending of school year affect that? Do parents want to bring their kids to a district that has an extended school year? Do they pull them out of a district that has an extended school year? And just curious about how it works with school funding. I mean, and maybe that answer is there and I'm just unaware of it, but curious how that works when you extend that. We know that a lot of school districts are talking about how they don't have the resources right now. And so how does that impact that when they're trying to do that and then provide additional resources over kind of the shorter summer or whatever the case may be. So it's interesting. And it's frustrating to hear about EAT and HISD, particularly because there was no conversation about it. I think if they had a conversation about it, I don't know what explanation would be acceptable, but at least there would be some acknowledgement that they changed it. But the fact that they just did that without really talking about it's really frustrating.
When I'm thinking about the weekend and what to do, there's one spot that's always on my list: downtown Houston. My oldest daughter loves going to downtown because there's this excitement that you only feel when you're in the center of the city with its parks and restaurants and theaters and so many events. Houston's original neighborhood, downtown, truly has something for everyone. I'm talking about meetups for pups and people, blanket bingo, free movies in the park, and don't forget amazing festivals. There's always something new, like their Black History Month celebration at Market Square Park and Valentine's Day at Treveley Park. It's time to experience Houston like never before by visiting or revisiting downtown Houston. Start planning your next adventure in downtown by heading to downtownhouston.org. Downtown Houston, get energized and revived.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
All right, traditionally we end the week with our moment of joy, and this is still going to be a moment of joy, but because it is Valentine's Day, we're going to switch this up and basically give our love letter to the city of Houston. Why do we love Houston? Monica, you started off.
I love Houston because of the opportunity available in this city. And I'll tell you, I grew up in San Antonio, flew off to college at 17 in New Jersey, went to law school in New York, always knew I wanted to come back to Texas. I am a Texan down deep in my soul. And when I was looking at cities to go to, looking where I was graduating with a law degree, who has great legal opportunities? And it was really a choice between Dallas and Houston. And in my mind, there really is no choice there.
No
It has to
choice.
be Houston.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But it's a city that at the same time has these wonderful, six-figure legal jobs. And at the same time, you see a story like Hugo Ortega, who it just gives me chills to think about. He came from Mexico. He was washing dishes, didn't even speak English, and went to HCC, learned English, learned a lot about restaurants, and is now so incredibly successful and such a symbol of what the potential is in this city. And so this is a real city of opportunity for everybody from, lawyers to dishwashers. I mean, the potential is there because we have so many entrepreneurs, so much entrepreneurship, such a rich culture that really embraces this. That is my love letter to Houston.
Yeah, and by the way, Chef Ortega won the James Beard Award for Best Chef in the Southwest in 2017. And of course, Hugo's such a celebrated restaurant here in the city of Houston. So opportunity is definitely one thing we love about Houston. What about you, Charles?
For me, I think it's the community, right? I mean, I think for a large city, particularly the fourth largest city, it's easy to not have community. But I think so many times in the city of Houston, we find ourselves leaning on each other for help and not even asking for it, people just jumping to give that opportunity. There was a story towards the end of the year of a family that had saved up money to buy a truck because they wanted to get into the trucking business and it was stolen. And then the community rallied together to invest so that they can get a new one. There was a story last year of a guy named John Lally who was on 59 as he was driving, and he was formerly incarcerated. He was driving. There was a shootout with HPD. He got out and pulled the officer to safety as he was being shot by the criminal involved in that situation, the super feast that happens every year downtown. I mean, there's so many opportunities in Houston that we just kind of step up and help one another, regardless of race, political perspective, anything like that. We just always seem to come together. And I think that's something particularly today that's lost in a lot of places. And so I really value the fact that we still have that in Houston, and I hope we can keep it.
My one thing about Houston I love is culture, and it was celebrated through watching season 2 of Mo. And yeah, I'm tying this in with my season review of Mo, the show on Netflix, which features Mo Ammar, who's a comedian right here in the city of Houston, grew up in A-Leaf. And, season 1 was a love letter to the city of Houston, what so many residents go through, some of our high points, our low points, the beautiful shots of the city. And season 2 was more about what so many of our immigrants are going through right now in the city, right? Through so many different immigration crackdowns and policies being put into place that impact, our residents. Mo did such a good job of explaining what immigration policies actually do to people in our city. And the show was fantastic. Season 2 was so great. It's the perfect combination of comedy and heartwarming stories and just love for the city. So, I want to bring that up, and it was so much fun. Did y'all watch it yet?
I saw season 1 and absolutely loved it, and I am saving it for a very special,
Do it.
maybe this weekend, a special binge, because I know it's going to bring up emotions, and I just want to be prepared
Yeah.
because it is so good. He is such a talented young
So
man.
good.
And so I am really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Rami Youssef, who also helps co-write it, a talented comedian. I'll just say the last episode, I had tears in my eyes. I'll leave it there and we'll talk about it. Charles, your thoughts?
I haven't seen either season. I need to watch it. Councilmember Tiffany
What?
Thomas,
Come
who
on,
represents A-Leaf, is always talking about him and always talking about the show. I saw him when he got commemorated down at City Hall. So I need to watch it. I really need to watch it. So I think I know what I'm going to do now.
That's your weekend assignment, and I hope everyone gets a chance to watch it. Charles, Monica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Culture, community, and opportunity. Gosh, I love H-Town, and I hope y'all do too. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Thanks to Monica Flores Richart and Charles Blain for joining us this week, and I've linked all the stories we discussed in our show notes. If you enjoyed the episode, send it to 3 friends who want to make Houston an even better place to live. Please subscribe to the show if you haven't already, and drop us a rating and review wherever you're listening right now. Looking for something to do this weekend? Check out our daily newsletter, Hey Houston. We have a lot of cool events in there, and you can subscribe to that with the info in our show notes. Thanks. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producers this week were Francisco Kilgore and Elizabeth Kama. Our newsletter editor is Brooke Lewis. Our executive producer is Laura Isensee, and I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos. We're taking a break on Monday for President's Day, but we'll be back on Tuesday to talk with one conservative leader about why he's still banking on public schools.